Welcome to Voices in Leadership, where leaders who connect, inspire, and grow come to share their stories live. I'm your host, Dr. Angela J. Buckley. Join us as we explore authentic leadership, gratitude, and the power of connection through powerful conversations with inspiring voices. Let's inspire, uplift, and elevate leadership that truly makes a difference together.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, hello. Thank you, Nigel Smart, for joining me. I'm so excited for this episode of Voices in Leadership. We have so much in common with our history working with lean and understanding how leadership impacts that. And now to forward that conversation into AI. I hope I didn't steal a bunch of your thunder with all of that. But
no, not at all.
Welcome.
It's great to be here, and thanks for the invitation. Yes, we do have a lot in common, as we've been talking a little bit offline, and we'll follow up on that. But this is your show, and I'm really happy to be here. I know you're going to make me think fast on my feet, which is something I love to do. So shoot, let's go.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to say you were going to have to sit there and smile pretty for the camera while I read your bio.
Okay, no worries.
So I find that this is the most uncomfortable part for some of my guests, and yet it is so important. So Nigel is a serial entrepreneur who has had a successful career as a scientist for more than 30 years, making significant contributions to the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industries, both in corporate and as a consultant. He is a successful author of several best-selling books, is a keynote speaker, and an advocate for leadership and high performance in both personal and business lives. In pursuing these interests, he has developed this dual role for promoting excellence in life experiences, as well as processes and systems. In both areas, he promotes the concept that he terms the powerhouse performance and uses creative ideas to push the envelope to imagine and generate new thinking concepts that increase performance outcomes. Using his technical life, he's identified common principles and opportunities which can be applied broadly to promote success and achievement. In business, Nigel's applying these principles to develop ideas for more effective management of organizations and more effective organizational structures. He is driven to achieve high performance. In the areas of relationships, Nigel has built courses and coaching to help divorcing men recover from their trauma, as well as building a fundamental approach to developing an extraordinary life based upon the mindset transformations. Two of Nigel's recent best-selling books include Bouncing Back from Divorce with Vitality and Purpose and The Unexpected Leader. He can be reached via his coaching site at www.relationshipsandlifestyles.com and his tech site, www.smartpharmaconsulting.com. Nigel,
wow.
Welcome today. I'm so glad that you are here. And what a great roundup of the last 30 years of your life.
It's been a ride. It's been a lot of highs, some disappointments, but I work on the idea that I learned from people like Tony Robbins that I met 30 years ago. No regrets, or minimize regrets. And I think you have to do that. Life is a roller coaster. A lot of doors open, a lot of doors shut. You've got to be prepared to grab hold of things sometimes and trust. I think it's really important that there is little certainty in life. The exciting part about it is the uncertainty actually provides the juice to some extent. The fact that things are uncertain and we don't know where we're going in creates that sort of trepidation, that excitement, that, ooh, I wonder what this ride's going to be like. It's a bit like going to the fun fair, which I used to love doing as a kid. Oh, I don't know if I can go to, I don't know if I can do that. And you go on it and go, oh my goodness, I want more. And I approach my life in that way. I think you've got to accept that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I've made some big ones. I've made some fantastic choices. I've had a lot of things happen to me that are unexpected. And as I tell everybody, you have to just power through. And this is where this idea, this concept that I have of powerhouse, high performance. I don't know anybody that is super successful that hasn't had a handful of massive disappointments. Most of the real successful entrepreneurs, the name people that have made, if you like, a lot of cash and equity in their lives, they maybe had 5 or 6 really horrible situations. And you think about Steve Jobs, who as a person, very
Absolutely.
But think of Steve Jobs. Look at how many disappointments he had before he came back to Apple and made it what it is today. I mean, that was almost an abject failure, but he kept going. And he was an interesting man, I think, that he took a lot of inputs from a lot of different places. So far from being the jack of all trades, a master of none, he was a master, but he took a lot of inputs from different places and actually molded that into something that was truly unique. In my own way, I try to craft things and take that as a really good example. And we can talk about some of those things. I'm sure you're going to probe me about 1 or 2 things that I've done. So,
well, I really appreciate your perspective on multiple inputs. I think there is quite a bit of value in understanding. There's a lot of research that supports it as well.
Right.
Multiple inserts, multiple perspectives at multiple levels of organizations is how you build trust, but also build robustness and build sustainability in your projects, right? Not just projects, your personal life, your research, new ideas. Okay, I have a great idea, but does it work, right? And is it my idea because I live in this sliver, or is it something that's going to apply broadly? And the only way you can find that out is by getting many people's perspectives.
Absolutely.
So you are also in the process improvement world.
Right.
When you walk into a facility, what are you looking to do first? What's the first step that you want to understand when you're looking at the process, looking at how people are going to get on board, maybe not get on board? What's that look like?
I go in as a sponge.
Okay.
I go in as a sponge, seriously. I'm all about energy and I'm all about atmosphere. And I am just a sponge. I look around, I mean, if you could see where my eyes were going or where the inside of my eyes was going, I'm all over the place. I'm in like, I've got like, on Star Trek, my scanners are going. All my inputs, everything I'm receiving from everything. I'm receiving the atmosphere from the people. I'm looking at the facility, or I'm listening to the to the team, the management. I'm listening to what their objectives are, and I'm trying to see whether the management or objectives or the goal of whatever it is you're trying to look at, whether that's congruent with the messages, the unspoken words that I'm receiving from the people. I really do believe, I'm a process person. I do believe in systems, but I believe that people, this is why I'm so big on human agency, especially in the age of AI, where AI is going to solve everything, right? No. I'm all about the idea that people are the things that will make a difference. People make companies, people champion ideas. So what I like to do is to absorb, and I look around to see if there are any champions. because ultimately you can listen. You will then formulate your ideas. Maybe you've seen the same situation before of a fashion in sort of like a slightly different context or representation. I often say to people will say to me, how did you know how to do that? And I say, I didn't. I said, that problem is like a man coming to me in a gray raincoat. But I've seen that same man in a brown raincoat before, or a green raincoat. And I start trading this, what the hell are you talking about? It's what I'm trying to communicate is, look, if you look too hard, you will miss everything. You just got to listen and look and take pieces, because very, very often, some of the things that you're trying to solve have already been solved somewhere else. You just have to take a few pieces from different areas and thread it in a different way. And then that gives you the angle. That will give you the angle to solve this problem that you're trying now to come up with a solution for. And so to answer your question as quickly as possible, I'm a sponge. I listen, I look around, I pick up on body language, I listen to what's being spoken, I read whatever people are going to give me on a whiteboard or what have you, or on a computer, and then I start to think. And I do all that as quickly as possible, especially if you go and maybe you're taken around facilities. I'm looking to see whether or not there are obvious things out of place. I'm looking at the good things that they're doing and saying, okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. Those are sort of stage gate ideas or pieces that we can build into a new picture, whatever that picture solution is going to look like. But that's what I do. It's not about going in and saying, okay, I've got all the answers, wallop. Or I like to get as much input as I can from people. At some point, maybe stage 2, is I have tools that I build, and I will talk to people at different levels. And I build a SWOT kind of, opportunities, threats.
For the people listening at home, what does SWOT stand for?
It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Yes, thank you.
I had to think about that one for a moment.
I know, because we use it so frequently. The first time someone asked me, I was like, oh,
you're going to look for.
You have to go review, yeah.
And you can build. I mean, that's one tool that I like to use, and it's such a basic tool, but you can build that in conversations, and you can make notes, and then later on you can formulate the strengths and weaknesses. And you can then build the opportunities. You can then maybe ahead of time, you can build the threats. You maybe, depending on what the issue is, what the threats are, because they're trying to enter an area where there's already a piece of technology, or somebody's already done something and you're aware of it and maybe they're not. And so when you build the threats, you can say you are going to need new options, because this is already an area that maybe is covered with patents, so that you on some other know-how, some trademark or something, and so that you will need to think about building new options. So that's one of the things that I would do pretty quickly over the next day or two if we go into a place and for an assignment where you might be spending a week. Maybe that starts to happen towards the end of the first day, and I collect as much information as I can. It's very important where there are in our game, talking pharmaceuticals, or in a process where you've got a regulated. It could be in the chip industry, it could be in the aero industry, it could be in the food industry. Where you're dealing with regulators, it's very, very important to get the inputs from the production side, but then you've got to listen to the problems from the regulator side. What you will find, and I know you've probably seen this organizationally in the things that you've done, is the people here don't understand the problems of the people here, and converse is true. And so what I'm trying to do is to get an appreciation of understanding what each other's problems are. And in that way, you collapse the silo situations that you tend to find where people are, this is my responsibility. Why are you interfering? Well, it's a collective responsibility. And yes, you can have line responsibility for the technical side, for example, but you also have a collective responsibility because you have a company goal, and the goal is to, in this case, to make a new therapy, a new medical device, a new pharmaceutical product, for example. But that's the way I go about it.
What is your favorite question that has really allowed people to open up when you walk into a setting like that?
What's my favorite question that people ask of
What's
me?
your leading question that you ask them?
Oh, that I ask them.
Start the conversation.
It's really easy. It's, what do you think is wrong? How would you go about this? Or where do you think you're failing? Because a lot of the time in organizations, we're layering up, and again, I've mentioned the silo type of situation, which that also occurs on certain levels, but people are not encouraged to fail. It's a word I don't like to use, but people are not encouraged to do something that could be a mistake, that could be failure, that something could not work. But we learn through making mistakes.
Yes.
You don't want to encourage people to make humdingers repeatedly. I mean, that's just incompetence. But look, every one of us makes mistakes. We learn through trial and error. R&D is trial and error. Especially today, we do a lot of simulations. So we can minimize the amount of experiments that we have to do because we simulate based on accrued knowledge from the past. This is why I like looking back and saying, what can we pull from our experience? What can we pull from our database of knowledge that's going to enable us to be able to design a better experiment? Of course, today we've got artificial intelligence, which is going to be the universal panacea, right? Wrong. What that allows us to do is when I do my simulations, when I do my permutations, instead of taking 6 months to do something, I can say to AI, given these parameters, what's your best estimate as to what the probability is that this is going to work out for this, and this set of conditions. And we can generate that information simulated, maybe in hours, certainly in days, which then takes us down a much more directed path. And to me, that's the value of why people can get excited now artificial intelligence. It's not that it's going to solve your problems necessarily. It's going to enable you, just like the internet could, in terms of searching. We would jump on the internet today and search for papers. Years ago, when I did my PhD, you had to go to a record card in a library and then search for periodicals and then write notes because you didn't have access to a photocopier. And it would take you days to research an area, days or weeks maybe, because a periodical wouldn't be there. Now you can get that in hours or minutes. And so it's another tool that enables you to come up with variations and permutations, which is exciting because it means now, what are we good at as humans? Thinking, being imaginative, coming off the wall, these crazy ideas, things that, well, that's never going to work. Well, we can try it out now and get rid of that. And if that doesn't work, we can move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. Do you think how quickly Edison.
Oh, Thomas Edison, yes.
How quickly would Edison have come up with the light bulb if he'd had access to AI all those years ago? He may have done it in 5 to 10 reps instead of 1,000 reps, which is what is often quoted as Edison didn't fail. It was all R&D. He had 999 failures before he got the light bulb to work. If we'd had AI back at that time, he could have simulated all those permutations and he could have probably cracked it within 10.
Potentially. But what he added in that process, we always talk about the light bulb. Yeah. But we actually didn't have a strong understanding of tungsten processing.
Yes, it's true.
What AI can't do is know about tungsten, right? So not only did he create a light bulb that functions, but let me expose my metallurgical background a little bit.
Love it.
You have to be able to have some of the fundamental knowledge about the world in order to feed the AI.
Yes,
his 995 failures that you say were about creating a body of knowledge about tungsten that then was stable enough to remain lit, right?
Of course.
We wouldn't be able to just go into a database and say, tell me everything about tungsten if he hadn't created the fundamental knowledge through that R&D. Recently, I saw a talk from the VP of NVIDIA, and when people have been saying, well, AI is going to take over everything, what should my kids study in school? He's like, AI will not take over everything, but if we don't have the fundamentals going in that are good, we won't have anything good coming out. Right?
And that comes back to, yes, you need fundamental understanding of mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology before you can do that. And
more specific.
And more specifically. You're absolutely right. I mean, I use that as an example because,
it's a good one.
For your audience, it's one that people get and it's one that people understand.
Yes.
And they, I want the light bulb to come on in their heads and say, oh, I see what he's getting at. It's very, very important that you can understand, if you like, the process that's involved, that it doesn't just happen like that. But the tools that we have enable our imagination that's creating. It's the curiosity. I just did a talk a couple of days ago, which you're aware of, and the provocative title was, in the age of AI, is humanity the weakest link, essentially? And my thesis is no, it's not, because it's our curiosity, which, as you say, feeds the capability of this enormous tool that is going to change everything for sure. But without directing it, without saying, okay, this is what I want. This thing is no better than the Texas calculator that we had as undergraduates that helped us from having to do our differential equations longhand,
Yes. And I'm old enough for that. I don't know if my kid is doing it longhand, but he had almost the same calculator for a while. So
I'm sure. I tell a story when one's in a social engagement. I remember as an undergraduate running off to see a rock concert with a friend of mine who was at another university who was becoming a dentist. And we saw this rock con together, and we came back the next morning on the train, and I got into the lecture theatre. We had a late start that day. I think it was like a 10 o'clock lecture. And I walked in the lecture theatre and I sat on the front bench, and everybody else was sitting towards the back. And the professor that was giving the talk, it was quantum mechanics. Well, I mean, you have to have a certain type of brain to want to appreciate that. I think I appreciate it more now than I did at the time. I sat on the front. I sat on the front row, and about 10 or 15 minutes in, my head went back, and apparently I started to snore.
Oh no!
And when I woke up, there's this guy that was like the bird off Sesame Street, looking down at me like this. And somebody prod me in the back to wake me up. This is a sort of thing that happens to all of us, but
it does, to the best of us, especially when we're working hard, long
Right.
hours. It catches up with you. We are human, right? Fundamentally human.
Thank God we are. And I believe, though, that we have a responsibility, Angela, to upgrade our skills. You know, I gave a talk to a half a million people in India almost 3 years ago. October, it'll be 3 years. I can't believe where the time goes. But 20 of us went over, and I gave a talk, and it was about leadership. It was about what's important, and what's important is you have certain skills, and you run up against problems, the type of things we're talking about. And at that point, you realize you need to upskill.
Yes.
You have to bounce up. You have to bounce forward. And I talk a lot about this. And then you get to a point where you kind of hit that glass ceiling again, and you need to bounce skyward, as I call it. So you need to do moonshots. You need to get this idea into your head that it's a constant, never-ending process that we have to go through. And I think from a health point of view, or a mental health point of view, I think it's a must-have, because I think it's the thing that keeps you fired up and young. I think it keeps you with onsets of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and goodness knows what else, dementia. I think it's the thing that keeps you really, really sharp.
Physically fit, mentally fit.
Yes, and I'm a great big proponent of that. I mean, some days it feels like my brain is going to mush because I'm totally fried. But I crave new information, because there are things that we don't know. And then as you read some work, great book, certainly on the neuroscience stuff that is happening so fast, you can then think about, gee, I had a problem some years ago, and now I'm seeing it in a different light because I have new information, and you've upskilled yourself and you don't realize it. But my late brother-in-law, who was a biochemist, he had done his degree and all the rest of it. And he used to say, why are you doing all these courses? There was a mindset and I loved him dearly. He was a great guy. Sadly, he died of cancer about 3 years ago. But he was a great guy. He had done his training, and he was doing his job, very good at it. But he was intrigued or not confused, but he always asked me, why are you doing all this? And I said, because there's always more to know. And maybe through knowing more, you're going to come up with something that is amazing, that somebody else is going to turn around and say, gee, I wish, I'm glad you did that, because you did that enabled me to do something else. And you sit back and you say, I didn't invent this, but I influenced somebody that did go on and invent something. And that to me is like, wow, you've influenced. And I think as a professional, I'm sure you see this in your life too. We have a great responsibility to influence, and where we are influencing people a lot of the time, most of the time we don't realize it. I crave people to influence me because I just want to expand my knowledge base as much as possible. It's enjoyable.
Yes.
But that creative side, as I listen, and I'm glad that you shared that interview about NVIDIA chip and those people, because they are at the front of that technology. And so to hear them admitting, look, this isn't, going to solve everything.
Right.
It's a tool that will enable humanity, humankind, human agency to fulfill its wildest expectations or its wildest dreams. And I believe that.
I mean, I don't know any solopreneur right now who is surviving without the support of the various AI systems.
Right.
The amount of work that's associated with being in a solopreneurship successfully
Yeah.
is significant. And AI can take off some of that burden. Can it make decisions for you? No. Can it walk into the plant and solve your problems? No. Can you use AI to identify problems if you're already putting systems in place? Where's
Right.
your data collection? What does your data analysis look like? You can create that AI that can be supportive of, but it's not creating itself.
That's true. That's true. One of the things I was going to share something with you as I was listening. I lost that train of thought. Never mind.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just think that it's really helpful to keep on growing, and if we do that, then we give ourselves infinite possibilities. The thing that I am emphasizing at the moment, as we share AI and we share problem solving in the various things that we do, whether or not it's in the tech area, which I work in a lot, or whether it's in the human experience side, which I do with my other coaching business. We need to recognize that we're interacting with people.
Yes.
And so that human agency piece, that interpersonal skill, is going to be something that as we individually or collectively in companies exploit the benefits of AI, we're going to need to enhance our capability to communicate with each other, so that we're understanding clearly understanding what is the issue that we're trying to solve, and are we communicating the needs and wants to enable another part of, if it's a company, to do their part on, which is a massive jigsaw puzzle where we all contribute certain pieces. If you don't, I don't know about you, but when I do all jig puzzles, I always do the outsides first and then I work inside. That's just my way of doing things.
Always. Where are the corners? Start with the corners.
With the corners, yeah. But I mean, if you have a particular set of skills, then and you can't communicate what the color is, what the shape is on the other part of the puzzle, then they're never going to be able to find their part, and it's never going to fit together properly in terms of the solution build. So that's something that I think that we're really going to have to get better at, because our communication skills universally is pretty rubbish. I think it is. I'm not trying to be disingenuous at all. I'm trying to be very honest. We also need to get more resilient about the challenges. And I talk a lot about being anti-fragile. People say, what the hell are you talking about? What's anti-fragile? You have to push back. You have to have that, what sometimes in England is called a Dunkirk spirit, or the never, never say die, or the never, never give in, which Winston Churchill is very famous for saying. It's, you have to have a belief. You have to have the trust in your conscience and in your belief systems that you can achieve something. Being anti-fragile is more than having the ability to bounce back in terms of a setback. It's being able to bounce forward and ultimately bounce skyward. It's being able to bounce to a place that is further forward than you were when you incurred a difficulty, for example. And the reason why I put it in that way is time is moving forward or always. And so if you have a setback, by the time you solve it, if you just say, I'm going to bounce back, you're not bouncing back to where you were before the event happened. That's already now in the past. And life has moved forward. The situation in a process has already moved forward. The situation in your life has moved forward. It's think about a car traveling at 30 miles an hour and something falls off. You're already 100 yards down the road before you realize it. It's the same when we approach how we deal with changes. It's a difference in attitude of how we deal with change. If you think about this like a hockey stick, or like if one's familiar with the starting a new company, the hockey stick graph is shown where you go into the red, into the negative end of the equation, and then you come out, and then you rise above the median line, and then you start to be profitable. And attaching problems is a little bit like that. You take a hit, you become resilient, you fight back, but then you have to find that other something special. And you're doing that because you're accessing something special in your brain, and you're accessing your higher cognitive capabilities. What is that? Your brain operates in a conscious and a subconscious or a non-conscious way. And your brain waves move faster in an unconscious way than when you're conscious. We all need to be consciously aware when we're solving problems. Yes. Otherwise, we can't solve the problem. But if you can get yourself into a mode that allows you to think 5 times faster because you're accessing different brainwaves, then the possibility exists that you're going to create opportunities that currently, under normal circumstances, under normal conscious circumstances, you're going to be able to access new possibilities that were not available to you. That is so exciting. That is so exciting.
Nigel, we have a comment here from a guest on LinkedIn. And Patrick said, humans struggled to align themselves when things were slow, as in pre-AI. Right. And now that things are going so much faster, humans will struggle to align more and more quickly.
That's correct.
And we have about 2 minutes before we move on to the next segment. So can you address his comment for us?
What he's talking about is we're living in a VUCA environment. What is VUCA? VUCA is volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous.
Yes.
Get him to send me a message and I'll teach him how to be VUCA positive. There's a tool I can show you. I can show you. It's called the line tool. I gave it yesterday in my talk. I'll talk about the line tool. I think we did it when we did the thing together in India.
The Mega Hub.
With Arafat.
Mega Global. Mm-hmm.
The Mega Global Group. I'll teach you how to be anti-fragile. I will teach you about VUCA. We have to be VUCA positive. What you're talking about, questioner, is you're responding to a VUCA environment and you're in negative VUCA. You're fragile and you're powerless. And I will teach you how to be anti-fragile and powerful. If you can get into positive VUCA, we can get you into flow. What is flow?
I've never heard VUCA positive. I like it.
Flow is
flow.
Being in the zone. This is accessing your higher cognitive capabilities, which will allow you to solve problems and perform better. We know this from athletics. We know this from physics. But you also can do this in terms of us as thinkers in our business, in our tech, in our whatever it is we're doing. You know, very, very quickly, Angela, I'll give him this. The Air Force aerobatic team, the Thunderbirds, there are 6 of them. Yes. They fly 18 inches apart. They do loop-the-loops, rolls, all manner of things. If they're thinking consciously, they would collide.
Right.
What those pilots do is that they go into a non-conscious, higher faculty situation where they're operating intuitively.
Yes.
We have that capability, but you need to be shown how to get into intuitive thought patterns, into flow. I can teach you how to do that. If you're interested, you can contact me through Angela or through the information that she gave at the start. But please,
right. All of the information will be on the voicesandleadership.live website.
I can teach you how to do that.
Yep. Great.
Thank you for the question, by the way. That was a good one.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigel, for sharing all of your thoughts. And you have led us nicely into the next portion, which is our gratitude section of
Right.
this episode. And one of the things that we talk about is the spirit of gratitude, and it's similar to SMART goals. It's simply a framework in which to provide feedback. And in this case, we choose positive feedback. So the S stands for spirit, for specific.
Right.
So what specifically are you thanking this person for? The P is for personal. What are the challenges? What did that person give up in order to be helpful or conduct the specific element that helped you?
Right.
I is for impactful. How did these actions impact your professional life and journey? And R is for relevant. This talks about your values, their values. How are they demonstrating their personal values through this action?
Right.
And then the second I and T are inclusive and timely. Inclusive meaning making this public, and T, in general, when you give feedback, you want it to be as close as possible to the time the event took place, right? In this case, we're doing a retrospective.
Absolutely.
So that's spirit of acknowledgement. So who would you like to thank and acknowledge today?
There is a couple of people that I'm thinking of.
Let's start with one.
The one I'm thinking about most of all is deceased. But I am so grateful to him. He was a Japanese gentleman that I met at a conference that I went to in 1982 in Tokyo. And his name is Masanori Misawa. And he was a director at a large pharmaceutical company that made anti-cancer drugs. And he came to visit my lab in England about 6 months after that. And he had accepted a job with a new biotech company in Canada. And he came to see what I was doing, a pilot plant that I put together, a new bioreactor that I'd co-designed, which was gone into manufacture by a UK company for growing cells, because we're talking about the early phases of biotech here in 1980s. And he asked me, would I like to have an opportunity to come and work with him in this new company? And it was exciting for me. It was something new. I just lost my parents both that year due to different illnesses. And I wanted to go on an adventure. And he provided me the opportunity to go adventure. And I'm enormously grateful for the fact that circumstances came together for me at that time. And I walked my talk. I was unsure. I was scared. And I said, no, I'm going to do something. I'm going to trust myself. And I'm going to say, yes, please. And eventually, after visiting this place in Canada, in Toronto, I said, make me a formal offer and I will come and work with you. And I did. And in the beginning of 1984, 85, I moved to Toronto and went to work for that company and worked with him. And we did some great things together.
So, okay, so he saw something in you. Let's be specific. He saw something in you. He took the time to investigate who you were.
Right.
And he made you a formal offer that was life-changing.
Yes.
So that's specifically what he did.
Yeah.
What do you think that cost him?
Well, in a positive way or a negative way?
So kind of yes. Like I feel like
I think
he take.
he took a gamble. He took a gamble. He came from a different
Mhm.
culture. We were going to another culture again. He had lived in Canada a little bit himself. He had done a sabbatical, I think, in Canada at some point,
Okay.
and he liked the lifestyle, which was less regimented
Yes.
compared to the corporate life in Japan.
Hmm.
But he took a gamble whether or not it would work out. He knew my circumstances,
Sure.
so there was an element of faith. But
Yes.
I think he appreciated my scientific capabilities, and I'd already demonstrated some capability.
Okay.
Um,
I th- Listening to you, that would have been what I heard. So okay. And then so that was S&P, and then I for how did that impact your career and your leadership journey?
um, it was kind of seminal in many respects. It really, I was in a new environment. I was in a high-powered industry environment. There was a lot of expectations. There was a lot of venture capital money. Um, there was a lot of responsibility that was thrust upon us, not the least of which was a hell of a lot of money, the like of which I'd never, I'd spent quite a bit in the previous circumstance that I had, but basically the budget I was given and the responsibilities to build things and to work with a lot of other people that were from very much more of an academic research background.
Mm-hmm.
One had to demonstrate as in terms of
Okay, wait.
what,
We're done with that answer.
okay,
Sorry, you're going down a side
another
path.
rabbit hole. Yeah, go on then.
So, okay, and what values do you were what values of the organization that you were putting together in Canada
Yeah.
does his action reflect?
Oh, and if you ever worked in Japanese culture, there's a high level of integrity and personal responsibility,
Okay.
and I think that gave me whatever I was doing personally, I had a bigger responsibility to make sure that I conveyed that or brought the best or brought other things out of other people, people that didn't realize what capabilities that they had in themselves. It's very, very true that people don't realize what people have inside of them, and it requires somebody else often to bring it out of them, or to bring
Yes.
them to a point of awareness, so
Development. Hmm.
they realize
Okay.
what their potential might be. And I think he did that for me.
Okay. So, can I try to summarize what you have put together and see if you agree?
Absolutely.
All
I
right.
trust you.
Careful, famous last words. Remind me so I pronounce his name correctly.
Masanora or Masa Misawa. We know him as.
Masa Misawa. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Masa Misawa, thank you on behalf of Nigel for your risk taking in seeking out his creative and technical expertise as a young developing biotechnologist. You took a step outside of your natural culture of rigid and took a risk with him moving to a new country, both of you in a new country, creating a culture of integrity and accountability within the group while also exploring new ventures. So, new venues, new development, things that the industry had not yet seen. And the impact on Nigel going from academics to large private equity is that it has directly impacted his career and his career trajectory, not only as an expert within his field, but also launching into all of the skill sets that are necessary for a successful consulting and coaching career today. You created not only the financial bandwidth for his development and growth, but also the space within which he could develop as a leader of an organization and a department and a leader of leaders.
Very good.
How is that? Is it accurate?
I think so. It's a fair summation of what I've shared. As I think of him, I think he would approve of what you've gleaned from the things that I've shared. And I think that to know if he was still with us, which maybe he is in a spiritual way, to know that his life had impacted somebody else's, in this case mine, in that way, I'm sure that would give him great pleasure.
Yes.
He was a gentleman, very patient man, even when we got upset and annoyed and probably a bit reckless. He was a very understanding man, and he did appreciate our capabilities and the richness that we brought together from different cultures. And I really appreciated his depth of knowledge, and to give him credit for being able to be that adaptable, especially coming from a very regimented culture, which even at that time, that was probably still the case in the 80s.
Yeah, it was probably the beginning of some of the openness, but not quite yet.
Yeah.
So, Nigel, one last phrase that you would like to share, one leadership tip, and then we are going to head on out. What do you want to share?
Be aware of what's going on around you. Always try to do the right thing with integrity. Listen to your gut and then act on that. I
like it. Thank you. Listen to your gut. I think this is a great example, talking about VUCA Positive, the stories that you've shared, the risks that people have taken to put you where you are today. Such a great wrap up of where we are. Nigel, I look forward to learning more about you in these coming weeks and potentially working together. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the impact that you have brought to the world through your leadership and coaching. Thank you, Angela. It was really delightful to be here and to share a few thoughts with you and your audience. And I look forward to many, many more interactions with you. Have a great day. This is Angela Buckley, and signing off till next time. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you for joining us on Voices in Leadership, where leaders who connect, inspire, and grow share their stories. I look forward to welcoming you back to our next conversation. In the meantime, visit www.voicesinleadership.live to access show notes, links, and to subscribe and stay connected. And in the spirit of gratitude, let's remember to thank one person near you. Until next time, this is Dr. Angela J. Buckley, signing off.